Kevin is the moderator, and thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Kevin covers mobile broadband, carriers, wireless technologies for Gigaom, and he's written about wireless networks technology for over 14 years, having previously written for Telephony Magazine and its online successor, Connected Planet. So let me turn it over to the experts here. Kevin, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us to our panel. And we obviously have a great panel here today. I'm going to briefly introduce them. To my left, we have Terry Addington, the CEO of SI Wireless, otherwise doing business as MobileNation. Most people know them. Next to him, we have Rodney Dir, the president and CEO of nTelos. Next to him, Jay Ellison, the Executive Vice President of Sales and Customer Service at US Cellular. And next to him is Meena, the President and CEO of Spire. And then at the end, Slayton Stewart, CEO of Carolina West Wireless. Thank you all for coming.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for coming up.
In any case, I wanted to start out the panel with a kind of a big question.
Couldn't get out the...
Hang on.
Yeah,
Steve's mic's on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hope he doesn't go to the bathroom.
And then we have our ghost panelist, Steve, who's what? I want to start the panel out with kind of a big question. I mean, the question is that can the small competitive carrier survive here in the U.S.? I mean, in the last couple of years, we haven't just witnessed the big operators try to merge with one another. They've bought a lot of the big tier 2 operators, those big kind of regional metro players like Metro PCS and Leap Wireless, and as far as those kind of mid-tier carriers left, I mean, US Cellular is really only one of the last remaining ones. Is the small carrier kind of an endangered species in the U.S.? I mean, 96% of all customers belong to the big 4 operators now. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, running small carriers yourselves.
Yeah, you want to start here?
Yeah, so you.
Sure. Well, I think the answer to that is it's a tenuous hold. There's a place for us. I think just the fact that there are still about 100 of us out there says that there's a place for us. But it is a tenuous hold. Especially considering the nature of the duopoly that's been created. We all compete against the duopoly, and for us to survive, I think it's become really apparent to everybody that we not only do we kind of need to share information and work together, but we need to find ways to partner. At the last CCA show, we talked a lot about partnering. That was a real big emphasis of the show because Masa-san had just announced his kind of strategic vision and partnership with small guys. And I think his message is as relevant today as it was then. We really can't thrive without partnerships, without collaboration, without strategic relationships that help us all develop a competitive footprint of competitive nature against the duopoly. Or in the marketplace, against the duopoly in the marketplace. Secondly, we need the FCC, when they talk about competition, they really need to understand what real competition is. And that competition needs to be pretty much unfettered access to the things that we need to compete, to stay alive. Without some of those things, we're gone. Without access to spectrum, devices, roaming, the whole 9 yards, the stuff we've been espousing for several years on this platform. I think under Chairman Wheeler's leadership, huge strides forward, because those of us who've known Tom for years and have worked with him, know that he is an absolute believer in competition. But the bureaucracy of getting things done needs to be streamlined. We need to move faster, we need to move quicker, and there needs to be a real emphasis on literally actually providing competitive options and the ability to compete, because it is a tough market, getting tougher every day because of the dominance of the duopolies.
Thank you. Rod, you?
Yeah, let me just kind of add a little bit to what Terry's saying, and I agree 100%. I mean, you obviously, you need access to the devices because that's what consumers are really asking for and really driving towards. But you also need the spectrum in order to serve those customers. But beyond that, I think the challenge for us is, and how we thrive and how we are successful in the markets is really better understanding who our consumer is and who our customer is. And we have to be closer to that customer, understand their needs and the demands, and create a different type of playing field than the big carriers are playing on, because that makes it very difficult to compete one-on-one, head-to-head, if you're playing on their home field. So it's important for us to differentiate in a way where we kind of dictate and create what the value proposition is, and we stay in that category, and hopefully we can be successful as a result of that. We can't do that without really key partners. You know, at nTelos, that worked very, very hard to kind of build those relationships, particularly our relationships with Sprint on the network side. We're able to leverage our network sharing capabilities as a result of that, which gives us a lot, tremendous amount of value that we wouldn't have as a standalone. It gives us access to spectrum that we traditionally wouldn't have without that partnership as well. So I think that's key.
I guess I would agree with both the previous speakers' comments. I think for us at US Cellular, I think the other thing that I'd add to that is, and it's a little bit along the lines of really having a good understanding, obviously, of your customer and how to utilize that data on that customer to improve the value that they're getting from the carrier itself. We really put a big, strong emphasis around that customer experience and drive that home at the front line, whether it's in a call center or at one of our stores. And underneath all of that is, of course, the network itself and making sure that it works where the customers need it to work. They're getting a great value from us. And we're delivering that through that customer experience. And I think the other final piece of that for us is I think we out-localize in some respect the big guys in the fact that our people that work for us in the communities we serve are really intertwined and ingrained in those communities, and they really treat customers like neighbors. So it's that niche that we've carved out, and I think we deliver that through our customer experience, and I think that makes a difference, and we see that day in and day out from the comments we get. But the other points relative to access to spectrum, which is critical, devices, partnerships, those are all absolutely, I think every one of us would agree, very, very critical. But that's kind of how we differentiate ourselves as well, I think is important.
You?
And I would say we don't have any interest in surviving. We have interest in thriving. And I think everybody in this room would agree with that. That, yeah, you can survive, but that's not doing the consumers that we serve in our marketplace any good if we're just hanging on. We need to be doing what we've been doing, and carriers in this room have been doing, literally measured in some cases decades, and that's bringing the latest in wireless technology and technology in general to the marketplaces we serve. So we want to thrive in doing that. There are key things that have to happen. These gentlemen did a great job of outlining what those things have to happen. We have to have an FCC ready to move at market pace, at a market pace and not a Washington, D.C. pace, because we're in the marketplace trying to compete, trying to bring these services to America. You also have to innovate. It's interesting that when the big guys formed their device exclusivity arrangements with the device manufacturers, they basically ceded innovation to the device manufacturers. And all the while they're saying, we don't want to become dumb pipes. Well, that's exactly what they did, became dumb pipes when they ceded innovation to the device manufacturers. And so we need to take that back. We need to continue to innovate in wireless. And also, just as important is, I think, is to diversify. Our company has moved into fiber optic technology. In the recent years, we've laid over 4,000 miles of fiber optic cable. We're in 1 gig fiber to the home business. We are building a Tier 3 plus data center, which will be one of only 51 in the U.S. And so we're diversifying in the exciting world of technology. We are innovating in those spaces because you can actually innovate in those spaces because the big guys are not controlling everything in those spaces. So it's an exciting time. So surviving is off. That's not anything that anybody's interested in. It's thriving, and I think we can all work together to do that.
Slayton.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add. I think the panelists have done a great job. But the only thing I would say is, in addition to that, is historically, we have networks that we've been encouraged by the federal government to expand our networks into areas that are underserved or unserved, and over the years we've used a mechanism, universal service funds, to expand that, and we've had reimbursements for that expansion, and with the changes that the previous panel talked about, those funds are under consideration and are likely being moved or going away completely, and as that happens, that will impact the extent of our networks today, and we will start to pare some of that network back if we don't have continue to have those reimbursements. And so very difficult to thrive in that environment, as Hugh was talking about, if some of that funding is taken away. And so all the other things from a partnership, spectrum, devices, being able to innovate, and diversify, know your customers, and have a unique value proposition. All those things are just table stakes. And then on top of that, having any expansion that the government's asked us to perform with our network or expand our network, continuing to have federal reimbursements for those areas.
A lot of you touched upon topics that we're definitely going to get to in other parts of the panel, like device interoperability and USF. And obviously the big roaming agreements, the love you but hate you relationships that you have with some of your partners. But just to get a little bit more into kind of the dynamics of what we're seeing kind of in the U.S. marketplace. I mean, just drawing from personal experience, I live in Chicago, and so I'm not actually in any of your footprints right now. But it's interesting to see what's happened in Chicago. 2 years ago, actually a year ago, there used to be a choice between 6 carriers. There was the big 4, there was US Cellular, and then there was a Leap Wireless. But now it's gone down to 4, basically the 4 big carriers. I mean, my question is, if we are seeing a balkanization in the U.S. where the big carriers basically rule the urban markets, and the smaller carriers basically are, I'm not going to say forced. I mean, these are your core businesses that you've built up over decades in many cases and stuff like that. But is that the way it persists, that those large population centers are always going to be for the big carriers, and the smaller ones are basically where you guys will be able to localize your networks, really stand out from the big carrier competition? I don't want to single you out here, but you obviously were one of those carriers in my city, and you recently exited Chicago and St. Louis. So I'd really like to get your perspective on this. Like, is that, I mean, what went into that decision? So
well, part of that really is, and we've talked a little bit about it, was spectrum requirements that would be needed by us in the future relative to this explosion in data growth. And as we took a look at that and thought about the investment that would be required and the access to spectrum, and it just kind of made sense for us to exit that market. But I kind of challenge a little bit of the positioning of are we in small markets? All of us serve, I think, some. At least in my case, I think of Milwaukee and certain urban markets. I mean, you look at Milwaukee, really it's a very large suburb of Chicago in some respects, and we seem to do quite well in Milwaukee, Madison, all those. But that was really what drove that decision. I also feel that the needs for the wireless services, whether it's wireless broadband or whatever, is no different in rural America than it is in a big city. You may have an adoption rate difference on certain things, but what the value of what this service does is ubiquitous regardless. And then it just comes back to some of these other comments that, again, your network has got to be solid so that it does work where the consumers want. But I think we play a very strong role relative to whether it's mid-tier cities, markets. But the neat thing about that is, in our case, we look at it, Milwaukee in 30 minutes, yeah, you're in rural America. Does it make, don't they deserve the same product services as that big city? And that's what role we play.
Well, yeah, and forgive me, I do probably sound like a big urban snob, like
No.
Chicago's, but I
live in Chicago too.
Yeah, I guess you guys are still headquartered there, right?
Yeah.
And to add on to that point, though, for instance, you start going down to I mean, outside of the big, huge cities, then in mid-sized cities, you still see that competition. Like you go to Milwaukee, you'll have like 5 carriers competing, 6 carriers competing. You go to Charlottesville, you get 6 carriers competing and that kind of thing. But do you find yourself being squeezed, like as you move from the super big cities down to the smaller cities? Any of you in the mid-sized markets that you in, or do you feel those pressures, or are you able to maintain that kind of localization, that kind of loyalty that keeps that competition at bay, so to speak?
I'll make one last comment. I absolutely think we do. I mean, I think it comes back to, all of us who are in those smaller markets. I think I would argue probably every one of us has a workforce out there that feels very strongly about the products and services and the value they bring to the communities they serve. A lot different than people in a big corporate ivory tower might feel. That's just kind of how I view it.
And I can add to that. We have one market that we purchased lower A spectrum back in 2008 that was going to be our spectrum for 4G for LTE. And we had another market that we also purchased LTE, but we also purchased PCS spectrum. And so we were still not able to utilize the lower A spectrum in this one metro area. And so we're struggling in that market. But another area where we rolled out LTE and relatively soon, not nearly as soon as we could have if there had been a level playing field, and if we had not gotten shut out, blocked out from participating in the marketplace with our LTE, but we were able to roll out in a metro area and have done fine there. So really, it comes back to having that level playing field that we've talked about forever. Any of us can compete anywhere we choose to if there's a level playing field. If there's not, if the duopoly is allowed to go unfettered to do whatever they want to do in this industry, then it's going to be hard for anybody to compete anywhere. It's not impossible, but it just makes it a little tougher.
Yeah, I would also say, and almost say that the competition is as big, if not bigger, in the second tier and smaller tier markets. But it's different. In the big markets, you're really challenged by things like share of voice and how the big carriers advertise and brand themselves. It's very difficult to compete on that same level with those guys. And it's more challenging from a sales and distribution standpoint to go in and compete. One of the challenges we have as a small rural carrier, it's difficult from a distribution point to be in the big box guys. It's hard to be in a Walmart and a Costco and those places. And when you're shut out, you're really shut out of a potential distribution channel that makes it difficult to compete at those bigger levels. I think that's one of our challenges that we have, and we're able to kind of overcome that on more of a regional level through our focus on what type of distribution we want to go after and how we want to support our customer base. And our ability to message through those channels to our consumers is much more effective and much more easier for us to manage. And if you've got spectrum and you've got service in those big markets, then you get that distribution opportunity typically with the big guys.
I'll take a slightly different slant. We're probably one of the few, if not maybe only, late entrants to the market. We opened our doors as MobileNation 2.5 years ago, so we're brand new. So we're walking in without a substantial customer base that has been built up, you said, over decades. Well, the company that I had built up over decades, we sold, part of Verizon today. I was owned by 6 independent local exchange carriers. They sold, they made a bunch of money. But they called back 2.5 years later and said, geez, we've got to get back in the wireless business. Can you get me into the wireless business? So we did. We operate in central, western Tennessee, western Kentucky. To me, a massive market in our area is Jackson, Tennessee, and 50, 60,000 Paducah, Kentucky. That's huge market for us. Do we compete effectively there? Yes, but what we've had to do is slice and dice our customer segmentation far beyond anything that I've ever imagined before. We've got prime customers that we attract from AT&T and Verizon. We've got high subprime, we've got low subprime, we've got prepay, and we've got Lifeline. And we're not Lifeline approved, but we address that marketplace. So what we've had to do is come in against these two big behemoths and try to slice and dice the marketplace in such a way that we have a chance to find our own niche. We have done a very good job of it. We've got, now we have a substantial customer base and growing. And I will tell you, here's where I think competition really justifies the desire to thrive, as Hugh put it. We bring something unique and different to these tiers of customers because those people have been rejected for credit reasons by AT&T and Verizon. So what we do, we come in and we give them, for the most part, post-pay product. We give them subsidized handsets. It took us 2+ years to get the iPhone, to convince Apple to even talk to us and get us the iPhone. We've got it. We supply that. We supply the gap. So we're giving substantial value and benefit to a strata of customers that would never see that value and benefit because they were rejected by the big guys for credit reasons. And we assume that risk. We manage that risk through valuing each strata and managing our offerings into each of that strata. So, I think a fairly compelling case on competition and how competition really brings additional competition brings additional value to a marketplace.
Okay. Slayton, I'm sorry, did you want to add something?
The only thing I had to add, really kind of support Terry's comments, is the largest city that we serve is Hickory, North Carolina, so that's not a huge city, but but we went into Hickory as the 6th competitor at the time, and it's been tough. We've had to slug it out, and we've had to differentiate our product and segment the market, and we typically offer a different product there. We offer the same products, but the different products are more attractive due to the markets that are available to us as the 6th competitor. So we have to understand the market better and be aggressive at things that we may not have been aggressive in our legacy markets, but just trying to understand the market and trying to compete. And it's difficult. It's not easy.
Not sure if any of you guys can answer this next question directly, but pretty simply put, I mean, given the wave of consolidation, the carriers going after the big carriers going after Leap and Metro, do you guys view yourselves targets? I mean, the big carriers seem to be acquiring spectrum more than customers these days. Do you feel is anyone at this conference basically going after your companies now? Or do you think in general, or do you think that at the tiers you're at, that consolidation wave is going to continue all the way down? And that's the more general way of asking it. So.
Well, let me. So I mentioned the 6 ILECs that sold the company. Made tens of millions of dollars each as investors. But in 2.5 years, they called back and they said, we got to get back in the wireless business. I said, this is going to be hard. This will be harder than the first company. I said, here's what to expect. And I asked them, do you have a long-term view or are you going to sell? Well, they said, we've already sold. Our wireline companies are under pressure, huge, enormous pressures, losing their support, their federal support, losing landline growth to wireless. And they're looking for competitive options. And so, where we're at is essentially, it's a long-term play. These guys have said, wireline's dying, wireless is where we need to be. Is there a price that they would ever sell out again? I guess, I don't know, but I put that question to them. They said, no, we got a long-term view. Help us get into the business, find a way to grow the business, and that's kind of what my job here has been at this convention and conventions, trying to find partners to grow the business, Sprint being one of them. Thank you, guys. And we're in it for the long term because they don't have any other options. So that's our perspective.
Yeah. Let me say this about acquisitions. There's one that should have occurred, and that Sprint should have been able to move down the path toward acquiring T-Mobile. Let's rewind back to San Antonio when Terry mentioned that earlier, when Masa-san presented to us a collaborative way in which we could all move forward to bring true competition to the marketplace. Well, he didn't talk about this, but it was seemed to be pretty well known and very much speculated that his next move was to acquire T-Mobile, which would have provided an entity that wasn't a legacy Bell company with enough scale and enough size and enough clout. And we had all been invited to participate in that, still invited to participate with Sprint, which is a good thing. But we could have been invited to participate with an entity with a scale the scope and the size and a tremendous amount of vision that would have allowed us to bring true competition to the marketplace in the United States, as opposed to walking up to the FCC with our laundry list of items that we need to be competitive again. We could have been competitive in the marketplace if the right signals had been sent from DC, and that would have given this industry a shot in the arm that would look a lot more like what's going on internationally. And most companies internationally, I attended Mobile World Congress back in February, there's excitement, there's enthusiasm, there's innovation going on. The only innovation in our industry today is done with the billing system. You know, how low can our rates go? Which is fine. We've always had low rates. We'll continue with low rates. But that's the only innovation you see here out of carriers. And throughout the rest of the rest of the world, there's true innovation going on. There's excitement. There's enthusiasm about the wonderful things that wireless can do. And it's unfortunate that this potential merger was not allowed to move forward.
Well, I mean, and not to dwell on the issue, and I've actually been kind of a bastard publicly bashing the deal. So, but I'm curious. I mean, do you all feel that way? Because I mean, if Sprint and T-Mobile had merged, chances are they would have gone to a GSM, HSPA, and LTA-based system, and wouldn't that? I mean, LTA interoperability and roaming is the big deal here, but wouldn't that have increased your device interoperability problems? And I think
absolutely not. We'd have had somebody with scale who was going to build out all the band classes. Yeah. It would have done nothing but help. They were going to include all the band classes and bring us all together so that we could compete with the duopoly. It would have been just the opposite of what of that.
Yeah, I think the other point is owning spectrum is not a strategy. It's what's important for us is that we've got contiguous footprint in a market that gives us enough scale to really compete. And that's probably the most important. If we're constantly looking at, who's going to acquire us and what's the strategic positioning, we've really taken our eye off the ball, what's really important, and that's, being profitable, being relevant to our consumer base and our customer base, and competing on that level. If you start trying to posture and position for strategic acquisitions and things, it's extremely difficult. I mean, you always have to have an eye on the vision and direction the company's going, but just owning spectrum isn't a strategy for us. You have to have a focus on being profitable, and that's where we really put our focus.
So several of you, talked about the Sprint, the Rural Roaming Partnership Program, I believe it's called, and then and also the Verizon LRLT in rural America. I mean, some of you actually belong to both of those programs, right? Talk a little bit about that, about how, those deals are working out for you, like what the status of them are, whether or not, the big carriers are kind of living up to their promises, and also how they're kind of a little bit different, how they differ from the roaming agreements that you had with them previously, because there's a lot more to them, there's much more complexity, right?
Yeah. Just real quick,
go ahead.
Slayton, you want so we were the first carrier in the U.S. to partner with two national carriers, so with Sprint and then also Verizon, the LRA program. We're making the agreements work. They are substantially different than the roaming relationships that we had in the past. There's a component for bringing devices, and then there's also a component for building networks. So we actually have to build a network that's compatible with Verizon, and we're building a network that's compatible with Sprint. And so just by that description, you can see it's much more complex and not as attractive as our previous roaming relationships, where we had a network and we were able to roam with multiple partners. Now, and I think some of this is due to interoperability and the differing paths of the national carriers, but it's a much more complicated agreement, and I'll say that we are making it work, and it is better than we initially had thought, probably a year ago. But there are still some pretty significant challenges. I think that roaming, as the previous panel talked about, the T-Mobile petition, roaming is still very challenging in the United States, and we need some clearer direction overall. Now, we as Carolina West have two agreements, and we're making those work, but not everybody does. So we're a winner because we have some geography that two national carriers are interested in. Not everybody is a winner because of that. So there still are roaming problems in the U.S.
And my invitation to the Verizon party got lost in the mail, so I haven't seen that yet. But I can speak succinctly toward the relationship.
Maybe you should just show up to the ball anyway.
I've gone uninvited before. Maybe I'll do it again. But when we met with Masa-san earlier and forged a new relationship with Sprint, they've done everything they said they were going to do and more. They're really a good approach, and we enjoy doing business with them and working with them.
Yeah, let me expand upon that, because I think that's critical. I danced a little bit with Verizon in their LRA, and they offered us something that just wasn't a right fit for us. And
what did they offer?
It was a geographic area that wasn't the right fit for us. It just didn't make sense, and so
Verizon was coming in and picking and choosing the areas of your geographies?
Well, it wasn't our geography. It was geography that was, in hundreds of miles away. They said, we need a partner here. Would you consider it? And it didn't work for us. They at least invited me to dance with them a little bit, so they like me better than they like you.
Now, what it is about you?
Let me, our relationship with Sprint is just, I'll give them kudos. At this point, they've lived up to everything that they said. Our roaming relationship now is in place, strategic relationships in place. We're making progress on the device hub. We're waiting for kind of the economics to understand the economics, to see if there's value to us in that regard. The roaming hub's being put in place. Thank you, CCA, for all your hard work, and Brad and Steve for putting all that together in conjunction with the Sprint folks. I saw Todd Rowley here earlier, so good job for you. Thank you very much. Now, I will say my perspective is that when we all talked to Masa, and I had 3 meetings with him, I think, that week back in the spring, late winter, his vision was like this, okay? I fear that maybe because of losing T-Mobile, maybe because of, I don't know, just the fact that things kind of changed, and they got a new CEO, obviously, that vision might be kind of maybe shrinking a little bit. That's not what we need. We need this vision. Masa energized us all because he had a broad vision that really brought a competitive footprint, a competitive offering to the marketplace where we could all partner together to go up against the duopoly. It's still in place to some degree, but I think I'm like you. We lost something when I guess the concept of marrying T-Mobile and Sprint went awry, and I would just encourage Sprint. I would hold Masa accountable for his promises to keep the vision here and not let it shrink down, because that's where we can all succeed. And I found him. My read on him was he was a man of his word. I believe he'll be there and continue to espouse the vision. It's just, I want to see a bigger vision. I want to see it follow through.
Yeah. And I would just add to this, simplify, it's a balance. So the partnership for somebody like nTelos is, it gives us access to spectrum, which is important. It gives us interoperability, which is critical, and it gives us access to devices. But more importantly, we have to add value back to those partnerships. So what can we do on a local level to bring a little bit more localization, a little bit more knowledge, local knowledge, and ability to give back? Because otherwise, it's a partnership that goes one way. Yeah. And I think that's really critical. The efforts of getting access to these devices and the relationships being built with these partnerships make it simple and easy to get access to these assets, which we need to compete.
All right. And you actually have another partnership going on with Dish Network, right? Trials.
That's correct.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about that and what's the status of that?
Yeah, we're really satisfied with it. The Dish Network is, the efforts there is really kind of creating a long-term vision about how we get not only wireless, but really broadband access to the unserved and underserved throughout America. And, it's really a technology vision, but working with Dish, we're able to share spectrum, we're able to share our relationships with our key vendors, and we're working together to really figure out what's the best way to solve those challenges and those issues in the market. We're offering high-speed broadband to homes in very underserved markets that don't have access to broadband today. We've got several customers launched and operating in those markets, and we're excited about the opportunity. So it's a huge opportunity, I think, for carriers like ourselves at how we can use different types of technology, access to how much broadband is required and how much spectrum is going to be needed.
And just a quick follow-up on the kind of the differences between the previous roaming agreements and the current ones. I mean, are they profitable for you? I mean, because of the way they're structured. I mean, my understanding is good. I mean, roaming has always been a very significant revenue stream for you guys. Is that, I mean, you know, obviously with these deals you actually get LTE roaming, so therefore it is a revenue stream. But is it as profitable or as big as, you know, CDMA, 2G roaming, 3G roaming? So
Yes.
It is. Okay. Short answer. Wow.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
I'll say yes, but I mean, the margins are thinner, but having a margin versus no margin, I prefer the thinner margin.
Yeah.
There's a lot more volume in the data world than it used to be in the old voice world.
Absolutely.
And I said yes only because obviously the details, when you're under NDA, we can't share the details, but you know, it's.
Oh, sure you can. Your lawyers aren't there, are they?
I'm sure Sprint's are somewhere.
And this everyone give me just given the deals that you have in place and the networks you're building, can everyone just give me a quick status update on your LTE rollouts, what the plans are, what's built, that kind of thing, and where it's built at? And Jay, since you aren't part of the, we could start with you since you're.
Yeah, we're continuing to roll out our LTE network. I think by the end of the year, I think we're going to be approaching about 90% of our customers will be covered with LTE, maybe high 80s. So, and plan on completing that next year. So we will have all of our customer base covered with LTE, and it's been really a phenomenal experience for our customers to get that out there.
And you're doing PCS and cellular as well as Block A, right?
I'm sorry.
You're doing PCS or cellular along with Block A, right? So.
Yep. We built out a substantial portion of our POPs in the more concentrated areas of which we had PCS spectrum, and we're still waiting to be able to use the lower A band, band class 12 in some certain markets because it would just fit those markets better. And we're continuing to build out. We've been operating LTE since the latter part of 2011, continuing to turn on new LTE sites all the time. It would be very valuable to us if all devices that hit the marketplace had band class 12 in them.
Basically, you managed to get around interoperability problems by going to PCS, but that doesn't allow you to use your spectrum to the fullest, basically.
Yeah, there's a reason there's been so much talk here about low-band spectrum and the need for low-band spectrum. There's so much talk about the auction next year, the 600 megahertz auction, incentive auction, because low-band spectrum is very valuable. We pointed this out to the commission in some hearings on competition back in 2009, the difference between the haves and the have-nots, and many times it comes down to spectrum that is lower than 1 gig. And so that's critically important. And there have been a lot of questions about what does it take to have a vibrant incentive auction next year. Well, the FCC should step up and help us on matters like the ones that we've been talking about this morning, including but not limited to USF, roaming and devices, and true interoperability that is pervasive and is across the board. Those type things, those are the things we need to step up for the auction to participate in the low-band spectrum, to get the low-band spectrum that we all need to be able to provide as high-quality service as we possibly can to consumers whether they live in rural America or work in the basement of a building downtown. Low-band spectrum just can't be beat.
Slayton, your network stats? So.
Yeah, we started building LTE at the beginning of this year. By the end of the year, we'll have about a third of our network covered. We plan on launching it commercially before Black Friday, so in the beginning November timeframe.
This is C Block 700 megahertz.
It's actually we're launching in 850, so band class
850, okay, but with the The LRA deal that you're launching?
So we're not, we're building a network for, our customers to use, and then that's also the network that we'll share with Sprint. Then we also have a separate network that we've built, the LRA network, in the upper C, 700 megahertz. And so we're not putting our customers on that network.
Okay, I see. You got a lot of work to do.
We are very busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we operate at 1.9. We built about a third of our network this year, LTE. Being a startup, not having a legacy customer base, we're obviously still cash flow negative, so capital is a huge issue to us. So our plans, we're going to build about a third of our network next year and then finish it off. If things go well, maybe we can pull that into next year and get it completely done, because obviously not being fully built out is a competitive issue. It is a serious competitive issue. But when your capital is scarce, you got to kind of move at the pace you can move. But what we've done is we've kind of diced up our market so we cover the important places before we get out into the real low density, highly rural areas. So it's worked out well for us. But we hope to. I would pray that we get it done in 15. Worst case scenario, we'll get it done in 16.
Right.
Yeah. So we've launched our LTE strategy in about 40% of our POPs, which is in our Virginia East markets. The challenge there is we're putting out a better than 3G type of LTE service, but we're limited by the amount of spectrum that we have there right now. So we continue to look at opportunities to increase our spectrum position in those markets. With our agreement with Sprint, we're able to build out our LTE network now. We just really kicked that project off, but we're leveraging both our 1.9 and the 800 megahertz and the 2.5 spectrum that Sprint has. So we're leveraging all those spectrum assets to build out our LTE strategy.
And to follow up on that, the interoperability deals that have come up. I mean, whether it's through the specific partnerships like with Sprint or Verizon or AT&T's commitment supposedly to band 12 interoperability. Are you seeing any results from that? I mean, are you getting? I mean, the iPhone launched yesterday seemed like a good example. It wasn't band 12 was not supported. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of talk about interoperability, but I have not seen, and granted, I'm not paying that close of attention, the results of it. Are you guys seeing it, or is it just around the corner, or what? Everyone's looking at you.
Hugh?
Oh. Hugh's so elegant.
Well,
stating the
it will be a big deal one day when Apple does include bandclass 12, and that's an important dynamic in our marketplace, and so that'll certainly spur it along. We've been sitting on $200 million of spectrum since 2008 when the auction occurred that we've not deployed yet. And thankfully, we have an outstanding management team who can manage through challenges like that. But it would be really nice to use that spectrum. It's beachfront property.
So that's why we all looked at Hugh. Think about this. You said 2008.
Yep.
So they bought $200 million worth of spectrum that they have been unable to use. Now it's 2014. What a waste of a national resource. Yeah. It's incomprehensible. I mean, I can't imagine why that has occurred, why anybody allowed that to occur.
If I wasn't so calm and laid back, I'd say something about it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get a couple of drinks and see what you have to say.
Yeah, we need that. We kept the coffee away from him this morning. But I mean, that's egregious, and that's why we kind of all looked at Hugh, because he is the classic example. We weren't in an entity yet, and so we didn't participate. But I do have a partnership with Hugh. Hugh and I go way back. We go way back to 1987, and he has been so gracious to work with us in our startup mode and help us develop in ways that is a partner. And part of that is that they have 700 megahertz that kind of overlays our territory. Right. And I don't have a 4G option. I don't have an option for some of my area, much of my area. And so here's a partner that I could work with who has agreed to work with me. And what's there to work with? And so that's a huge, huge issue, and we're like dumbfounded.
Yeah, and I think Terry's right. Partnerships, it's all about the partnerships. Whether it's what CCA is doing here to bring visibility to these key issues, or through the partnerships that allows us to get access to these devices, which puts leverage on the device manufacturers and the OEMs to actually put these band classes and get make these devices interoperable. And that's where the partnerships come to value. And whether it's on a network agreement or a roaming agreement or through a device hub project, it's very difficult for any of us to take that initiative on ourselves. We need that to happen.
But that's why it's so frustrating to come and hear those from Washington speak about they're working on these things and they're patting themselves on their back for all the things they've done for competition. In the real world, functioning interoperability does not exist holistically. There is some, but it's just not. It's just not there.
And that's why a carrier like Carolina West is building 2 LTE networks because there's not interoperability.
Yeah.
And another waste of resources.
What an inefficient use of
So
resources.
inefficient.
Yeah, what an inefficient use of resources.
Jay, do you have anything to add? I know US Cellular is sitting on a lot of Block A too, right? So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, obviously, I think these guys have expressed it well, but, you know, when the FCC had the 700 interoperability agreement, I mean, we applauded that position, but it still, you know, comes down to, getting it operable, right? Offering it out there is putting products and services out there.
Well, one more point on that. So talking about the auctions that are coming up and any future auctions. I mean, if we had, and I think you may have said this earlier, if not on this panel, you definitely said it at the board meeting yesterday. But if we had a greater assurance that we weren't going to have the interoperability issues that we've had with 700 megahertz, you know, we would show up to these auctions in spades.
Sure would.
Yeah, well, that kind of leads into my next question. I mean, how important is this 600 megahertz auction coming up? And Chairman Wheeler spoke here yesterday, or 2 days ago, and spoke at CTIA yesterday. And one of his big messages is he wants carriers to, you know, hold pep rallies and get excited about the auction, and rah 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 basically. And he pointed to some big carriers, but he also seemed implying the smaller carriers needed to be doing it too. But as you kind of pointed out, though, a lot of you kind of got screwed in like the 700 megahertz auction. Is it? I mean, can you make those commitments? And do you have the assurances that you're not going to face with 600 megahertz what you face with 700 megahertz Block A? So.
No, but he can provide them.
That's right.
And so very important. Obviously, the access to additional spectrum, and it's the lifeblood of our industry. And the more spectrum that we have, the better service that we can provide to our customers. Obviously, low band spectrum, as several of the panelists pointed out, will provide better coverage in rural areas, better in-building coverage. Very important. We have some AWS spectrum where we've launched in certain areas, and PCS spectrum, that we launched in certain areas, and we'd like to get some low band spectrum underneath it to provide a better quality of service for those customers. And we're extremely interested in 600, and we'd like to acquire some spectrum there. But I can acquire it, and I'm going to sit on it for how many years?
Right. We need to participate. We need to participate, but again, going back to what we said earlier, need a level playing field. That's all we're asking for. All we've ever been asked for is a level playing field on the industry inputs that it takes to run a cellular operation, whether you're focused on rural areas or urban areas or a combination of both. If we have those things, we'll be there with a wheelbarrow full of money.
I'm not going to go into specific, obviously, auction strategy, but I think, as Meena said, we're going to participate. Obviously, lower band spectrum is very high quality, but it's got to be on a level playing field. But we intend to participate. We'll be at.
And just to clarify, what you guys mean by lower playing field, you're not talking about designated entity status. You're talking about not creating a stratified system of bands, which some would be, basically the advantage over others. Correct. So, right. Yeah.
I was really.
I'm not going to go into auction
specifics. Strategy, but also the specificity around some of like the uplink capabilities in some of these. I mean, there's a lot of vagueness yet to the rules and how the auction will be played off. That some of that clarification, will help us as carriers decide if that's the right strategy for us to go into as well. And it's really going to meet our needs.
I was impressed by the fact that the chairman and others from the commission throughout the last couple of days has said, almost pleadingly, you are going to participate, aren't you? You are going to, and almost pleadingly, and we know the reason why. And so it really behooves them to say, yeah, for us to say, yeah, but you've got to make the playing field level. You got to even this thing out in a variety of ways that I think some of these folks are probably more conversant on, but it's got to be a level playing field.
So I mean, if the level playing field is reached, if they do provide that, I mean, how important would this auction be to you if they met those requirements? I mean, is it going to be? I mean, there have been talk about this is going to be the spectrum that sets broadband strategy going forward. It's the same way that we had a new category of services built on AWS and 700 megahertz. We could find that with 600 megahertz. Do you believe that, or
let me answer that by saying last time we thought the playing field was level in 2008. We spent $200 million. So I don't know. I don't know how we participate. But that's how valuable low band spectrum is. Yeah. It is absolutely essential to a high-quality network.
So even though you've been burned, you're pretty much saying we still have to participate in this auction. So.
We would like to participate.
Yeah, we would
really like to participate.
I don't think to the degree that they can instill confidence, I don't think they have to worry about carriers showing up to the auction.
That's a fair statement.
Yeah. Well, we only got 5 minutes left, so I didn't want to leave without talking about the Universal Service Fund and changes that are being proposed and how that's going to affect, I guess, funding for wireless broadband networks. And I was basically just teeing this one up for you and letting you guys comment on who wants to start.
Well, I think if it goes away, I mean, obviously, your cell site's got to stand on its own. You've got to make a business case on every individual investment you're going to make, and I think that's as I said earlier. I mean, people in rural America and everywhere else find value in this product, but once that happens, as that shrinks, then we've got to make business decisions around where we're going to invest our capital, and it's got to have a return on that capital. And I think it's served its purposes quite well in the past.
Consumers in rural America want wireless services, fixed services, maybe absolute wireless service. If it would be 90% if you could talk to all of them. They would say wireless services are absolutely important to us as you live, work, and play in rural areas. And so the way the money is collected, 44% of the money is brought in by wireless carriers, and in single digits is returned back to wireless carriers is what's on the table these days. And so it's just absolutely essential that wireless be supported with the Universal Service Fund because it would be a shame to borrow my colleague's Ben Moncrief's term that we have a bunch of towers rusting in rural America. Yeah. We need to continue to provide quality wireless services in rural America. It's absolutely essential.
But it seems, I mean, you're also investing quite heavily in some pretty advanced wired broadband services, correct? And then, so, I mean, is that a reflection because that's where you can get
we're utilizing that wired broadband for two things. One is to connect our towers throughout our footprint, both urban and rural, but also fiber to the home. And we're using the Google model of those who, that's a kind of crowdsourcing model. So where there is enough interest, we'll build. And so that consumers want broadband services. But one of the couple areas that we are utilizing our fiber to offer non-fixed services are in schools. We have an education revolution project that's bringing one-to-one connectivity in schools throughout Mississippi. It ties into our fiber. We use unlicensed spectrum to provide those type services. Telehealth is another. It is really taking off in Mississippi. We're involved in some trials right now. So it's not an either or, but fiber makes a wonderful backhaul mechanism. It makes a wonderful connectivity to the home. But when you get to the home, there'll be devices like tablets and other types of devices that'll be robustly connected to the fiber. So whether that home is in rural America or urban America.
Hugh makes a great point. The students that sit in these schools the needs are unlike the ones that are sitting in Washington, D.C. or they're sitting out in rural America. They need access to the same content and the same type of services that broadband can offer. To us, it's a last mile solution. Do you take fiber that last mile, or can we do it more effectively with wireless? So that's really the key. What's the most efficient way to get access to those consumers and get them the kind of bandwidth they need.
And one concern that might develop is we could have a school online and functioning with one-to-one connectivity, high-speed broadband, which is certainly needed, and they get to their home out in a rural area and not have coverage.
Right.
And so they can't connect back into the system, which they are able to do in many places today.
I've never, previous company, this company, I've never received USF, so I guess I won't miss what I never have gotten. Kind of an interesting point, though. Substrat of that is the ETS designation, the Obama phone, I guess. We just recently are in the process of assuming a carrier that that wants to exit the business, and so we're assuming they had a ETC license, and I find it interesting that we weren't able to assume that license and continue to serve those low-end customers. We either have to create something unique for them on our own, or they lose that support that they've been getting through a federally subsidized program. I thought that was kind of interesting, that we can't just transfer the license, or we just can't assume those customers and receive that support. So I just thought that was unique.
Well, we're running out of time. I mean, I had one last question. Can I ask that, or do we have to? Yes? Okay. I wanted to just really quickly look into the future, like 2 years from now, after 2015, after the auction, worst case scenario, best case scenario, what is the, the regional and rural carrier market going to look like?
Best case scenario, we keep working in partnership with some larger friends and develop a robust footprint, a robust handset ecosystem, and develop a competitive model against the duopoly. Worst case scenario, the duopoly is allowed to continue to grow, dominate, and exclude, and we are in a position not to thrive.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's going to be great. I think you'll see small carriers rather be fast followers. I think you'll see them revigorating themselves and reinventing themselves in a different way. And I think rural carriers and rural service providers in the future will look a lot different than they do today.
And what's your worst case, though?
I don't think there's a worst case.
Okay.
If you manage to the worst case, it's a death spiral.
I would agree with a couple of the comments made. I think the best case scenario is we're all sitting here very happy and we've got a level playing field, right? Worst case is, for some odd reason, we're not. But I think we're here for the long haul. U.S. Cellular is here for the long haul. And so I think as we can be a fast innovator or a fast follower in some cases, or a smart follower actually, probably even more importantly. So that we're not going to offer every product in the world, but I think if we're a smart follower, we'll continue to grow our revenue base, which is important, and provide that high quality service. We'll be sitting in this in this room a couple years from now. Worst case is the industry doesn't play a level playing field. We have to make decisions on what our strategy has to be in that type of environment.
A couple years from now, I think we'll all be in the data moving and storage business, because I believe that's where we're headed. That's where a lot of us are going right now, and we'll be even more so because the demand for data will be high, and we need to best position ourselves with assets that we have at our disposal, whether they be wireless, whether it be fixed type services, and that is what we need to do our part in growing this economy.
I'd say best case would be interoperability, level playing field. Worst case would be continued hurdles and obstructions to being able to compete. And if that happens, then continued consolidation. And I think, as Rodney said, a death spiral.
Well, death spiral, that's how we can end this panel,
right?
based on the word death spiral. Well, can everyone please join me in thanking our panelists? You guys are great. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Very much.
Good job. Great job. Yeah. Nice job.
Connectivity here.
I hope you guys please.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Good job.
We're good? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the panelists. Kevin, thank you so very much. Terry, Rodney, Jay, Hugh, Slayton, thank you so very much. Okay, real quick, we have a few announcements here right before we finish, and I know that everyone wants to get to the final drawings we have here. So while we're doing some announcements, I'd ask everyone to fill out a evaluation form. Take it to Lucy in the back, that should be right there, and they'll give you a raffle ticket. And we'll get on with the raffle, and we're going to give $1,000 away, 2 $500 batches, and we're going to give some prizes away for the utilization of the app. So number one, we've got a thank you to our Pinnacle sponsors. It's hard to believe that we've just sort of started, and now the convention is coming to an end. And we certainly want to thank our Pinnacle sponsors, Alcatel-Lucent, Ericsson, Huawei, Interrupt Technologies, Sprint, Cineverse, and TNS. Without your help and support, this would not have been possible. So thank you for our Pinnacle sponsors. Thank you so very much. Okay, as you complete those evaluation forms, let me go through the process. We're going to have an opportunity to get some green in your jeans here in just a few minutes. Okay? Let me give you an update on what else is to come this afternoon. We have FirstNet and Mount Royal 2. So right down the hall, there'll be FirstNet, Mount Royal 2. Ed Parkinson from FirstNet will give you an update on where FirstNet is. As you know, they're coming very close to an RFP on FirstNet, and I think it'll be interesting to see how quickly FirstNet is coming online with some of their major decisions. And hopefully you'll have an opportunity to look at that at 11 o'clock. And then 11:15, we have the Small Cell Forum Workshop, which is free to anyone that is registered. It should be a very interesting discussion to enjoy over lunch. So we'll also have lunch provided, and I hope you'll stick around for the workshop and participate in that. And then our next CCA Global Expo event will be in March 25th through 27th in Atlanta, Georgia. And our events committee are already planning for a robust program at Atlanta, and as you know, it's a great town to be in. So write that down in your booklets now, March 25th, 27th, CAA Global Expo. And I always encourage you to participate in CCA. Give us a call. Let us know if we can help you in any way. Sign up for a committee. Get involved. Come to DC. Visit us. Okay, now it's time for the 3 top app users. Let me just run through those real quick. Again, everyone filling out their evaluation forms, get your raffle ticket, and we'll do a raffle right after everyone's filled in their tickets. Okay, the third place winner for the apps user contest is Randy Turner. Randy Turner, I don't know if Randy is here, but the third place winner is Randy Turner. If he's not here, you don't have to be present to win. He's already been present all over the app, so we'll make sure he gets his money. He was $50 to Randy Turner. Okay, the second place winner is $75, and we have